Welcome back, students. It's school time once again, and we're going to cover one of the most interesting parts of Asia, one of the largest parts of Asia, in fact, called Siberia, which is all in Russia, as you can see in the background of this map. It's actually Siberia itself makes up about 30% of all of Asia. Siberia is 5.1 million square miles, and Asia itself is about 17.21 million square miles. So almost 30% of Asia, all of Asia, is made up of Siberia. We're going to be talking about this interesting place. Let's talk about the big picture first. Let's give you a big picture of Siberia. All right. First off, like I said, it's over 5 million square miles. And on its own, it's just part of Russia, not European part of Russia, but the Asian part of Russia. It would be the largest country in the world just on its own, even if you took away the stuff to the west of the Ural Mountains. Now, that said, even though it's so huge, it's only got a population of about 34 million people in this massive 5 billion square mile area. That means that the population density, like how many people live in square miles, is only about 7 to 8 people per square mile. Makes it one of the most sparsely populated regions in the world. And also to give you a comparison, where we live in Allegheny County, the population density in Allegheny County is 1,684 people per square mile. When you compare that to Siberia, you can see that is quite a difference. So that is Siberia. That's a picture of the West Siberian plain right there, with its taiga forest. All right, now, so it's basically broken up into three regions, is Siberia. Okay, over here we have the West Siberian plain. In this large red area in the middle is the Central Siberian Plateau. And then over in this whole eastern range is what is called the mountain ranges or the highlands of East Siberia. We're going to take each of these regions individually and discuss them. All right, let's start with the West Siberian plain. All right, this is a stunningly gorgeous area. It's basically a continuation of the plain that starts all the way in France. There's a plain called the NEP, the Northern European Plain. And when you get across the Ural Mountains or the Ural Hills, they're really not that formidable, you will come across this vast plain. And it's 1 million square miles, and it's very low land. It's marshy, meaning it's kind of swampy in a lot of areas. And more than 50% of the land in this area is under 400 feet above sea level. That is pretty low. That's a very low area of the world. And it extends from the Ural Mountains to the Yenisei River. All right. And the Ob River makes up a large part of this. Now, if you looked at the West Siberian Plain, if you went to the extreme north, what we're going to find in this plain is basically three types of environments, okay? In the extreme north, you're going to see this. This is called tundra. Tundra is usually not that pretty. This is a picture I took of tundra in the summertime. And what is tundra? Okay, tundra is this treeless plain. There are no trees in tundra. There's not enough water to support trees or good soil to support trees. And it's in the Arctic area. So if you went to the extreme north, the West Siberian plain, you will find tundra. All right. And the ground, the reason there are no trees and the plants are very sparse is because the ground is permanently frozen. And this permanently frozen ground is called permafrost. But in the summer, the top layer of it it gets hot enough that the top layer melts or thaws out, and then you can see here the grasses, the mosses, lichens very briefly grow, and then they will die again and leave it pretty much a plain of permanently frozen ground. Next, over here you see the taiga. This is a giant, it's mostly pine, but there is birch forest in there, birch forest. So that is taiga. It's a massive pine and birch forest. We're going to be talking about this later. And then in the southern part of the West Siberian plain is an area known as the steppe. And the steppe is that grassland. Okay, the grassland similar to the savanna in Africa or the prairie in the western part of the United States. They call it, in Asia, they call this area, the grassland area, the steppe. Now, just so you know, guys, in all the areas of Siberia, it follows the pattern I just went over with you. In the extreme north, you'll find tundra, and then you'll find taiga, and then you will find some steppe, the grassland. But let's take a look at Central Siberian Plateau. There's a couple of very interesting features with this one. Now, first off, you remember that the West Siberian Plain was only 400 feet above sea level in almost 50% of the areas. This is a plateau. Now, it's going to be, you can put this in your definitions if you would like. A plateau is a markedly elevated, like it's much higher than a plain, a markedly elevated tract of comparatively flat land. So on the whole, this land is rather flat, and that's what makes it a plateau. It's not a mountain range. It's just an elevated tract of land that is flat. Now, how elevated? Pretty significant, okay? Where the West Siberian Plain was only about 400 feet above sea level in most of the area, this is over 2,000 feet above sea level, all around the West Siberian Plateau. And like I said, it follows the same pattern. In the extreme north, you have tundra. In the middle, you have taiga. And in the south, you have the steppe. Now, two very cool things. First, this picture over here, you're probably wondering what it is. In 1908, in this part of an area along the Tunguska River, this massive explosion occurred. Most scientists think it was either an asteroid or a giant meteor that hit this region, and it knocked down over 80 million trees. And this is a photograph of some of those trees, literally like toothpicks. These were substantial trees, but this massive explosion that could be felt all the way throughout the world. There were seismic readings when this explosion occurred all around the world. Knocked over 80 million trees in the taiga forest. The effects of this can still be seen in this part of Siberia. So that's one very interesting fact, and that's this picture here. Over here is the deepest lake in the world. This is also in the Central Siberian Plateau. This is called Lake Baikal, and we've mentioned this one before. And it is the deepest lake in the world. At its deepest point, it's 5,387 feet down. That's over a mile deep. Most lakes are not nearly that deep. In fact, there is more water in this lake, even though it is smaller in area than the Great Lakes. There's more water in this lake than all the Great Lakes combined. In fact, this lake holds 20% of the world's unfrozen fresh water. And like I said, its deepest point is 5,387 feet below the surface. All right, now we're going to come to another fascinating region. This is the extreme east of Siberia, and this is the Eastern Siberian highlands. This region contains several mountain ranges, and you can see those on your features map if you ever take a look at that when you're looking at Siberia. And in the extreme east, in Kamchatka, the Kamchatka Peninsula right around the Sea of Okhotsk, you will see active volcanoes, and you see they're pretty cold volcanoes. You see this right here. There's a picture of a volcano at the Kamchatka Peninsula. But because it's on the ring of fire that surrounds the entire Pacific, it is also subject to earthquakes. This region has the lowest recorded temperatures of any inhabited region on Earth. The only place where there are low recorded temperatures are in Antarctica. So the East Siberian highlands, it gets really cold. And now we're going to come to one of my favorite little tidbits about Siberia, and that's Verkhoyansk. Okay, and that's a picture of it right here. That's a picture of the sort of a tribute or a monument to how cold this place actually is. It holds the world record for the greatest temperature range on Earth. So in January, the average temperature in Verkhoyansk is negative 59 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty darn cold for an average temperature. Okay, negative 59 degrees. And in July, the average temperature is almost 60 degrees Fahrenheit. In the summertime, at the height of summer, it's over 60 degrees. It's at 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which is reasonably warm, especially compared to negative 59 degrees. Okay, so what do I mean by the largest temperature rates? On one day in January, a low temperature was recorded of negative 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Negative 90. okay, 90 degrees below zero, all right? And in July, a temperature of 99 degrees Fahrenheit was recorded. And that's 189-degree temperature range. So from January to July, the temperature can swing 189 degrees, and no other place on Earth has a larger temperature range than Verkhoyansk. And not that it's a tourist attraction, but they want to memorialize. It's a very small town, in fact, but they want to memorialize how cold it can get there. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about the natural resources of Siberia and how they're exploited. All right, Siberia, it's a very difficult place because of the weather, because of the cold, because of the swamps, because of all of these things, and yet it is rich in natural resources. It contains over 80% of Russia's oil, and its coal is found in Siberia. 85% of Russia's natural gas, one of its greatest resources, is found in Siberia. There are also diamond mines and copper and iron, and 85% of those resources are found in Siberia. And it is 40% of Russia's wood reserves. All those giant taiga forests contain extraordinary amounts of usable wood for timber and for lumber. And yet, it is very difficult to exploit these things because of the difficult conditions and the weather in particular. The sad picture I see up here are actually Russian prisoners. Back in the communist era, they were trying to find a way to exploit these resources. So they built a series of labor camps or prisons, and this whole system was known as the Gulag. And there were hundreds of thousands of prisoners were sent to the Gulag, and they were there to help extract the rich natural resources of the area, but they were living under such prison conditions, brutal conditions in this area. There was immense amounts of suffering, and many of these people were political prisoners who suffered under the communist regime at that time. In addition to that, the government also invested heavily in building cities in some of the coldest regions of the country, if not the coldest regions on Earth, to help exploit these resources. Now, how are they going to get all of these amazing resources out of here? And this is a project that began in the late 1800s and continued in through the 1960s, and it was completed. This was what's called the Trans-Siberian Railroad. And that was the unique method they used to exploit all of the amazing natural resources of Russia. And it's a railroad that is the longest railway in the world. The Trans-Siberian Railway extends from Moscow to Vladivostok. So Moscow in the European part of Russia, all the way to the extreme eastern part of the continent, very near in a place called Vladivostok, very near Korea and all of these areas. So it is an incredibly long railroad. And as you can see on this map here, they built extensions that go through Mongolia and into China. Okay, there are extensions of the Trans-Siberian Railroad. So they can carry out trade between China and Russia via that railroad. Like I said, it's the longest railway in the world. So that is our next region of Asia. I think we're going to do the Indian subcontinent after this. Please take all these notes. We'll have a quiz in a few days on this material. And I hope you enjoyed your Easter break, and we will hopefully see you sometime. All right. Thank you so much for listening.